Today we'll be looking at U.S. History Standard 3, Explain the Primary Causes of the American Revolution. This standard will measure your understanding of the main causes of the American Revolution. The primary cause of the American Revolution was the growing belief among the colonists that their rights as Englishmen were being violated. This belief originated in the lingering effects from the French and Indian War. French and Indian War resulted from a long, simmering rivalry between Great Britain and France and their competition for territory in North America. The French and Indian War broke out in 1754 when Great Britain challenged the French for control of the land of what is now Ohio and western Pennsylvania. Native Americans tended to support the French because, as fur traders, they built forts rather than permanent settlements. Great Britain, though, eventually won the war. The Treaty of Paris of 1763 was a treaty that ended the French and Indian War and forced France to turn over control of Canada to Great Britain. France also surrendered its claim to all land east of the Mississippi River, with the exception of the city of New Orleans. Additionally, the treaty gave the British government control of all Britain's American colonies. The colonists objected to the loss of control over their own affairs, and some Americans first got the idea of an American Revolution. Tensions grew when Parliament passed laws to tax the colonists to pay for the cost of keeping a large standing army in North America to protect both Britain's possessions and the American colonists from attacks. The tensions increased with the proclamation of 1763, by which Americans were forbidden from settling beyond the Appalachian Mountains in an effort to limit their conflicts with Native Americans. Britain's American colonists believed the king and Parliament were violating their rights as Englishmen. Among the rights they felt were being violated were protection from taxation without representation, the right to trial by jury of their peers, the protection from searches without warrants, and protection from having troops quartered or living on their property. Parliamentary actions to tax the colonists or to enforce the tax laws provoked a negative reaction from the colonists that eventually led to open rebellion. These actions included the Stamp Act and the Intolerable Acts. The Stamp Act required the colonists to print newspapers, legal documents, playing cards, etc., on paper bearing special stamps, like a postage stamp. Buying the stamped paper was the equivalent of paying a tax. Some colonists formed groups called the Sons of Liberty to stop distribution of the stamped paper. 9 colonies sent representatives to the Stamp Act Congress, which sent a formal protest to the king. The Intolerable Acts closed the port of Boston as punishment for the Boston Tea Party. These acts also allowed British officials accused of major crimes to be tried in England and forced the colonists to house British troops on their property. Colonists called for the First Continental Congress to protect these actions and formed colonial militias to resist enforcement of these acts. Much of the planning of the First Continental Congress was carried out by the Committees of Correspondence. These committees were formed because American patriots could not communicate publicly. One committee would exchange written communications with another committee within or between the colonies. Committees of Correspondence were the first organization linking the colonies in their opposition to the British rule. In January 1776, patriot philosopher Thomas Paine published Common Sense. This small pamphlet had a big effect and moved many Americans to support independence from Great Britain. Colonists were persuaded by the logic of Paine's arguments, including that the Atlantic Ocean was too wide to allow Britain to rule America as well as an American government could. That it was foolish to think an island could rule a continent, and that if Britain were America's mother country, that made Britain's actions all the worse because no mother would treat her children so badly. A sample question. How did the colonists react to the proclamation of 1763? A. They resisted the British regulation of colonial agriculture. B. They supported the right to manufacture goods within the colonies. C. They opposed the ban on colonial expansion into western lands. And D. They accepted the presence of more British troops to protect the colonies. The answer is C. They opposed the ban on colonial expansion into western lands.